Ahead of his first official visit to China, Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong sat down for an exclusive interview with Leaders Talk. Having visited China many times in recent years and witnessed its leapfrog development, he remarked,
"The transformation and success of China, I feel, is nothing short of an economic miracle."
On the deepening ties between the two countries, he said,
"The cooperation between our two countries, because of the close partnership, is never static. It never stands still."
Facing a turbulent and complex global landscape, he stated,
"Our response should not be to abandon the multilateral system. Our response should be to reform, change, improve, and make the system work better for the benefit of all countries."
Leaders Talk exclusive with Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Zhou Yun. Today, here we are at Singapore Istana, and we're here to speak with Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. As he prepares for his very first official visit to China since taking office, what are his expectations for this upcoming trip? Marking the 35th anniversary of China-Singapore diplomatic relations, how does he interpret the all-round, high-quality, future-oriented partnership that was upgraded in 2023? And amid global uncertainties and challenges, how does Prime Minister Wong see China and Singapore working together to meet the shared challenges and tackle them? Let's find all these answers from our conversation with him. Mr. Prime Minister, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on Leaders Talk.
Thank you.
It has been just over a year since you assumed office as the Prime Minister of Singapore, and nearly a month since your cabinet was sworn in. So how has this transition into the role been for you and the responsibilities that come with leading a nation?
It's a big job with significant responsibilities. There's nothing that really prepares you for this. And even for someone like me, I've been in government for a long time. I've been in the civil service for nearly 15 years, in politics for about 14 years. So nearly 30 years of experience.
Right.
Still, coming into a job like this, there is still a lot to learn and adapt and adjust to. But fortunately, I have a strong team of ministers, MPs, members of parliament supporting me. And so it has been a smooth transition, both in the government and in the leadership of the People's Action Party. I led the party into our general elections, and I am very grateful that Singaporeans gave me a clear mandate to lead for another term.
China and Singapore established diplomatic relations in 1990. Over the past 35 years, bilateral ties have developed rapidly. In 2015, during President Xi Jinping's state visit to Singapore, the two countries established an all-round cooperative partnership progressing with the times. In 2023, their relations were further elevated to an all-round, high-quality, future-oriented partnership. In June 2025, Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong is set to pay his first official visit to China. This will not only mark his first visit to China since taking office, but also serve as a significant high-level exchange as the two countries commemorate the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations.
Prime Minister Wong, you've been to China a couple of times before.
Many times.
Many times. But you are going to embark your very first official trip to China as the Prime Minister of Singapore next week. So what different expectations do you have for this trip, and what will be the key priorities guiding your agenda?
Well, I made it a point to visit China almost every year since entering politics, because it's useful to visit regularly, to interact, exchange notes with my counterparts, and to get a sense of how China is moving and transforming. I've always had good visits. I've always had good exchanges and meetings with my counterparts. As you say, this time will be a different occasion. It's more special this time because it's my first visit in my capacity as Prime Minister. I would look forward to achieving several objectives. First, to just establish closer ties with Chinese leaders, especially with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang. Second, to reaffirm our shared commitment to enhancing our bilateral cooperation, especially as we mark the 35th anniversary of diplomatic ties this year.
That's right.
And then, of course, thirdly, to discuss the wider regional and global developments that we are all confronting during this challenging period, and to see how we can continue working together to strengthen multilateralism and the rules-based global order.
You met with Chinese President Xi Jinping last November on the sidelines of APEC Economic Leaders meeting. So what's your impression and also some major takeaways from your meeting with President Xi? And as you just mentioned, you will be scheduled to meet President Xi again. What are some of the major topics that you hope to touch upon during this meeting?
We had a short but productive meeting at the sidelines of APEC last year. My first time, in fact, as Prime Minister at that time. We discussed our bilateral cooperation. We discussed cooperation in regional platforms like APEC and how we can take this forward. And I said to the presidency at that time that I would be visiting China next year. That was in 2024. I said next year in 2025 when we mark the 35th anniversary of diplomatic ties. So I'm doing so right after the elections at the soonest possible opportunity to visit China now, and I hope to be able to meet him again.
And just now you mentioned that your visit this time coincides with the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two nations. So how do you interpret this bilateral tie, which was upgraded in 2023, now termed as an all-round, high-quality, future-oriented partnership? And what is your vision towards the future trajectory of it?
China and Singapore have very close and steadfast partnership. It's a partnership that's built on mutual trust, respect, and understanding. It started with our founding Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and Mr. Deng Xiaoping, and successive Prime Ministers of Singapore since then have built on that strong foundation to establish close rapport and trust with their Chinese counterparts. So I hope to do the same in my visit with Chinese leaders, especially with President Xi and Premier Li. And I think the close ties at the leadership level sets the tone for the overall relationship. We have an apex body called the JCBC, the Joint Council for Bilateral Cooperation, that oversees the many multifaceted and comprehensive projects we have with one another. I used to be the Singapore co-chair of the JCBC. In fact, the JCBC meets every year.
Right, annual.
Each time they meet, the agenda keeps growing because there are so many things to discuss. But it's not just the number of projects, because in the spirit of our partnership, we are pursuing projects that are all-round or comprehensive, that are high in quality, and are also future-oriented. And so these are the guideposts that will shape our cooperation in the future. And with the close partnership we have, I am optimistic that the future of our cooperation is bright, and there are many more things we can do together.
As you just raised that you've been to China many times, to cities, I think, including Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, etc. Chengdu. So what are some of the major changes and transformation you have witnessed through all those years in terms of China's development and modernization that you think are inspirational to you in governing a nation?
The transformation and success of China, I feel, is nothing short of an economic miracle. Because in the last 20 or so years, when I've been visiting China regularly, even as a civil servant and then later as a politician, across so many different Chinese cities, not just your Beijing and Shanghai, but even in a city like Chengdu.
Right.
And other cities, you can see transformation happening. You can see the determination and the drive of the Chinese people to move forward. And you can see lives getting better and improving. So it's a remarkable change, and I continue to wish China every success in its ongoing transformation and modernization efforts.
And you recently made the remark that never bet on the decline of China. So what are the key factors that underpin your confidence? And has China's recent economic performance, especially amid the global headwinds, reinforced your belief in its long-term resilience and also potential?
Well, first of all, it's what I've just described. It's the track record of success. Remarkable success. Of course, you can say past performance does not predict future performance, but still, it's a very impressive track record, which gives one confidence. But a second factor is that I've interacted so many times with Chinese leaders at all levels, the mayors, the party secretaries, the governors, and of course the leaders at the center in Beijing. And I've always been impressed by the high level of competence, by their deep mastery of issues. They understand the challenges. They are focused on resolving the challenges and problems that China faces. But it's more than just competence and mastery. It's also a willingness to listen and to be open-minded about finding better solutions. Because governments never get everything right. It's impossible. Governments will make mistakes from time to time. What distinguishes a high-quality system is the ability to reflect, learn, and keep on improving and doing better. And I see that in the Chinese system. But the biggest reason, the most important reason why I have confidence in China is because of the people of China. It's because of their tremendous ingenuity and resourcefulness, the deep drive to succeed, to strive and work hard. And that gives me confidence that China will continue to have a good future ahead.
Thank you for the good wishes. And you'll be attending the annual meeting of New Champions,
Yes.
which will take place in Tianjin this year, also known as Summer Doubles. So what will be the key messages they hope to deliver there, especially with this global context, with the world now going through choppy waters filled with so many different challenges?
We are in the midst of a profound global change. So my message at Tianjin will be the importance of upholding a rules-based multilateral order. Because without rules, without long-standing norms of cooperation, countries everywhere will be worse off. Small countries like Singapore, of course, are very concerned because we have limited bargaining power and we risk being sidelined and squeezed by the bigger powers. But I think big countries will be impacted too, because if we end up in a world that's more fragmented, where there's deep suspicions and mistrust of one another, this will be a world with great uncertainty and volatility, and you will have slower growth and higher inflation in the global economy, which means all countries will suffer, and our people, at the end of the day, will be the ones facing the impact. So we have to do something about this. Of course, multilateralism today is not perfect. There are things that can be improved, but our response should not be to abandon the multilateral system. Our response should be to reform, change, improve, and make the system work better for the benefit of all countries.
Given the challenges they just touched upon, the tensions in trade, anti-globalization trend, various geopolitical risks, and so many different pressing issues faced with the world, what is your top concern for Singapore from your perspective?
Well, we know that from Singapore's perspective, we are small, we are an open economy, we rely heavily on trade. So this new external environment will make it less hospitable for us to continue flourishing. So we have to find ways to navigate the external environment carefully. But I think despite the changes that we see around us, trade will still continue. Countries do want to be more self-sufficient in this new environment, but it's not possible for any single country to do everything themselves.
Talking about trade, you've recently described the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration as a seismic change in the global order, suggesting the era of free trade is over. Given what you have just mentioned, Singapore's heavy reliance on global trade. So what are the specific plans, what are the priorities for your government to navigate through the swifts and also the pressure in the global trading system?
As I mentioned just now, the era of free trade, or the era that we are familiar with, may be over, but trade will still continue. Different configurations, different supply chains, we will try to be competitive, we will try to stay relevant. But at the same time, we will work with like-minded countries to uphold free trade and to uphold a rules-based trading system. We are doing this with our neighbors in ASEAN. So within ASEAN, we are accelerating our integration, bringing down trade and non-trade barriers so that we can make ASEAN a more integrated community, more competitive, more attractive for investors. We are doing this with partners in Asia, like China, India, Japan, South Korea, for example, working closely with all the key players in Asia. But we are also pursuing this with countries outside of Asia, like the EU, Latin America, Africa, for example. And some of these are countries we are not so familiar with, but we think we should now make an extra effort to establish closer links with them. We are also strengthening our cooperation in regional platforms like RCEP and CPTPP. And we are finding ways to establish new linkages across different platforms. For example, between ASEAN and other groupings. So these are all different areas we are exploring. I believe in every crisis there will always be opportunities. And so we are finding ways to seize new opportunities for ourselves and for other countries.
Just like the Chinese phrase,
Yes,
危机,
of course.
so the opportunities always come with
We may speak English, but we are very Asian in our thinking.
Speaking of regional and global cooperation, China and ASEAN about a month ago have announced the conclusion of negotiations on version 3.0 FTA, and with the aim to be signed by year end. So how do you interpret the significance of this upgraded protocol, especially in this global context of rising protectionism and uncertainties?
It's a very important upgrade, and Singapore fully supports it. It's in line with the spirit of what I said just now, that amidst the pressures of protectionism and trade barriers, Singapore will want to work closely with ASEAN and other like-minded countries to continue to uphold free trade and a rules-based trading system. So in that spirit, we fully support the upgrade to the China-ASEAN FTA. We hope this can be signed at the coming ASEAN-China Summit in October, and that the new upgrade will come into force soon after that.
As important partners, China and Singapore have seen deepening exchanges and fruitful outcomes in the fields of economy and trade, science and technology, and people-to-people ties. Since 2013, China has remained Singapore's top trading partner for 12 consecutive years, while Singapore has been China's largest source of new foreign investment for 12 years in a row. Singapore was the first Asian country to sign a bilateral free trade agreement with China. In April 2023, the two countries concluded follow-up negotiations on upgrading the FTA and officially signed the subsequent protocol in December, injecting new momentum into bilateral economic and trade cooperation.
Over the years, China and Singapore have established three major government-to-government projects in Suzhou, Tianjin, and Chongqing, and also state-level bilateral cooperation projects such as the Guangzhou Knowledge City. So, Mr. Prime Minister, do you envision, for instance, introducing a new project during your term, or what are some of the new areas of cooperation do you expect, apart from these existing initiatives?
I would first clarify that these existing initiatives are not simply projects that are completed and then we've turned the page and then we move on to something
it's still
new.
Developing and growing.
They are work in progress. In fact, they are platforms. The G2G, the government-to-government initiatives that we have are platforms for wider cooperation. So to illustrate, the Suzhou Industrial Park, which was our first government-to-government cooperation, very successful. And now recently we marked 30th anniversary of the Suzhou Industrial Park. And now we are looking at a new frontier for cooperation, where the cooperation may be wider, not just between the government entities, but with a wider ecosystem of players. Or take another example of Tianjin Eco-city.
Yes.
It started as a barren wasteland, and the vision was to transform this place into a place for eco-living, green living. We've achieved that vision, and recently we marked the 15th anniversary of the Tianjin Eco-city, and now we are saying let's look ahead, have a new chapter, and think about how the Tianjin project can be a model for high-quality green development and sustainable growth for China. So in each of these projects, we are constantly finding new ways to cooperate. At the same time, beyond these existing platforms, we are always open to new ideas, and we are continuing to discuss new possibilities for cooperation, including in areas like low-carbon green energy, digital economy, and biomedical sciences. So the point is the cooperation between our two countries, because of the close partnership, is never static. It never stands still. We are always upgrading, improving, trying to find new opportunities to cooperate and to be responsive to the needs of our times. That's the spirit of our cooperation. That's why I'm so confident that we can continue to do more together.
The world is now going through so many major challenges, the challenges unseen in a century. So what is your reading, your evaluation of the current global scene in terms of the geopolitical risks of those uncertainties that we're faced with?
We are in the midst of a very messy and unpredictable transition. We are in a state of flux, and it will take time before we find a new equilibrium. I think the new order will be shaped eventually by not just a single superpower, but by all countries, large and small, by the actions and choices of all countries, big and small. And this will take time. In the meantime, we are in this period of transition, very unpredictable, very chaotic, and potentially very dangerous as well, because during this period, without clear global leadership and coordination, there are many things that can go wrong in this world. So I think what's important for all of us, countries everywhere, is to recognize the dangers that we are in, for all of us to do our part to manage geopolitical tensions and rivalry carefully in order to minimize the risk of conflict and war, for us to find ways to get countries to still work together and find win-win cooperation, especially in areas of shared interest. And then step by step, we can all work together to lay the groundwork for a new and more stable global order that may emerge in the years ahead. It will take time, but we should all do our part to shape this new global order.
But in this time of transaction, imposing heavy tariffs on so many different countries around the world might not be the proper solution, right?
We don't believe it is. The administration reflects a growing sentiment amongst the American people that they are paying too high a price to be the world's policeman, to underwrite the global system, and they have not benefited. In fact, we believe America has benefited. It has benefited if America were to take an enlightened self-interest, not just a very narrow perspective of its interest, but a wider view of its interests. This system has benefited America too.
Back here in Singapore, you are referred as the leader of 4G, the fourth generation of political leadership. So what core values do you believe define the governing style of 4G leaders?
The leadership we have now will continue to uphold the core values of the People's Action Party. These values will never change. The values of incorruptibility, meritocracy, multiracialism, because we are a diverse society, and self-reliance. So these core values will continue to be values that my team and I will uphold in governing Singapore. But at the same time, our leadership approach will be different. Every leader has to be himself. You cannot pretend to be someone else. My approach is to be open, to listen to different views and suggestions, even if there are views which are different from mine. I would like to listen to them. I would like to engage widely and involve as many people as possible. But at the end of the day, the government must decide, must come to a decision.
What kind of narrative do 4G leaders aspire to create, especially in light of the remark you made that the best chapters of Singapore's story is yet to be written?
We hope we can continue to keep Singapore special, exceptional, a shining red dot, a shining little red dot that will continue to add value to the world and ensure that everyone in Singapore can continue to achieve better lives.
What do you mean by a shining red dot? It is small, but it's very evident and it's shining. Or what
it's a
is
little red dot because that's the, I suppose, slogan that we have for ourselves, a little red dot.
Yes.
Because we are a small country, but shining. History has never been kind to small countries. You look the long arc of history. Small countries find it very hard to survive. Singapore has defied the odds for 60 years. This is 60 years of independence this year. We will try to continue defying the odds of history and keep Singapore special.
A very unique experience in your career is serving as a principal private secretary to the then Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong from 2005 to 2008. So what are some of the major lessons or the biggest source of inspiration that you gained from working very closely with Senior Minister Lee?
I was always struck by how devoted he was to Singapore, to the country, and how obsessed he was every single day thinking about how to keep Singapore going. Because as I said just now, we feel the vulnerabilities more as a small country. Big countries, you may feel, there are resources, you've got wealth, you've got many things you can rely on. But as a small country, we always feel we are vulnerable, we take nothing for granted. And I'm always struck by how obsessed he was. So now that the leadership baton has been passed to me, this has become my obsession. And I'll do everything in my power, together with my teammates, to keep Singapore moving forward.
Mr. Prime Minister, when you first emerged as the new leader of the nation, I don't know whether you have noticed that if you take a closer look at the headlines at that time about media coverage of you, there are sometimes a phrase that is frequently used. Do you know what it is?
I have no idea. There are many phrases.
Sometimes it's guitar playing new Prime Minister or guitar wielding Prime Minister. We heard it's actually a guitar from your father, a gift when you were a child.
That's right.
That sparked,
long ago, yes.
Yeah, about 40 years ago.
Yes.
Which sparked this passion for music and playing guitar.
Well, I started playing at a very young age, maybe 8 years old or something like that. But I never had formal lessons. I was largely self-taught.
Yes.
So I don't claim to play very well at all.
That's very modest because we saw some of the videos that is
but
very
I enjoy
professional.
doing it. I find that music helps to break barriers. It helps to bring people together. And so I enjoy doing it. But for me personally, I just find it's a good way to unwind, to de-stress, especially doing a job like this. You do need outlets to relax from time to time.
Is there a go-to Chinese song that you really enjoyed with playing your guitar? We're just wondering.
I have played a number of Chinese songs. For example, 周华健's 朋友 is one song that I would play in my constituency.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for sharing with us your time and also your insightful views. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much.
During the interview, Prime Minister Wong described China's development achievements over the past years as a miracle. He looks forward to deepening and solidifying cooperation between Singapore and China. And we also hope that both countries can continue to move forward together on the path of modernization, opening a new chapter of high-quality development. With that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Zhou Yun reporting from Singapore. Thank you for watching and see you next time.